What's good, Celtics fans? Happy Monday. Well, hopefully happy. By this point, you've had time to compartmentalize what we witnessed on Saturday afternoon / evening / night / Sunday morning if you're not in the East Coast or in the United States of America. Don't worry. We're going to hit on it. We're going to talk about it. And hopefully you're going to leave this podcast feeling a little bit better than when you came in. But there's a chance that you won't too. We'll see how it goes. As usual, for a Monday morning, I'm joined by my homie, my compadre, my co-host in crime. I got it right this time, everybody. Mr. Greg Manakis. What's popping, Greg?
What's good, man? What's good? Yeah, we were just talking about this before we get on here, but I'm definitely feeling a little hungover from the game. I had a show last night, so I got the emotional hangover from that, and then the actual hangover from drinking a little bit too much with the friends, because I actually went out for the first time these playoffs, and I went out to a bar to watch the game. So I met up with our other co-host, Will. So he's my best friend. So we met up down here in Austin, Texas to watch the game. And then we met up with a bunch of other buddies that are, Celtics fans or Celtic fan adjacents. And it was just really good time being able to commiserate with everybody, because that was a game in which misery needed company.
What was Will drunk?
Will, yeah, I mean, his girlfriend was driving. So that tells you one thing, right? She's a trooper. She came out. And she was the designated driver for him. But I wouldn't say when Will gets drunk, Will's hilarious when he's drunk, man. Like, I can't wait till we actually get to be together in person with you and just hang out. Will's one of those guys that will get like super, not affectionate, but he'll do a lot of shoulder grabs, when he's drinking with you. So like, he wants to be as close to you as possible if he's really drunk. So he wasn't doing that last night. So I don't think I could say Will was really drunk. I think we were all just like enjoying being out in society, watching a game, because we've been doing all the stuff on playback. And as fun as that is, nothing beats getting together with your buddies and watching a game.
I wouldn't know.
You don't have any Celtic friends over there, right? It's just you.
Friends at this point, dude. I'm focused too much on basketballs and anything else. But no, not one. No.
Well, dude, when you come to the States, we will get together and we'll make sure to watch some games if they're live, or we'll go back and watch some games that have happened from the past. Hopefully, at the end of this season, we'll be able to like go back and watch some of these games. The season the Boston Celtics won banner 18. Hopefully it's this season, and we can go back and watch some games from this playoff run together.
It's gonna feel weird using hashtag banner 19 in a few months' time.
Yeah. So you're still feeling good about that, huh? You and Will came out in the last pod, and you guys were saying some stuff. I was like, yo, you guys got to pump the brakes a little bit.
Like, listen, I don't really live in hot take territory. It's very rare you'll ever hear me come out and make a prediction about anything to do with the Celtics or basketball. I might give you an educated guess, and I'll reiterate the fact that it's just my opinion or my guess. But I feel strongly, and I still feel strongly, and we'll get into why. First of all, just to finish this talk on Will being drunk, Will strikes me as somebody that sways a lot when they're drunk. Just a big smiley face swaying side to side. And that's what I imagine.
Oh my God, dude. I have a hilarious. So the first time Will ever came to visit me at college, we were upstairs. So Will he was originally in my class, but then ended up a year behind me. So he was a freshman when I was a sophomore. He went to UMass Amherst. I went to Boston College. UMass Amherst, if you don't know, that's the big party school. BC's not as much of a party school as UMass, but he came to visit me, and I was really cool with my RA, he played basketball with me. So I just knew him from basketball. So when Will came to visit, I was like excited that my best friend was coming to visit me for the first time. And we got trashed at the pregame, like absolutely wasted. And Will ended up coming upstairs to the party. It was like one of those dorm parties. And I didn't really recognize that Will was on swaying drunk, as you just described it. And this man leans against a pillar in the room, in the party, and within seconds, just like plants right on his butt. He just, as my RA is watching him, he just has his hand on the pillar, and I just see him go down like a big tree. I was like, oh my God, like the first time I ever bring you to college, and this is what you do, bro. It was great. No, but Will's super fun to drink with. Last night we didn't really turn up as much as we could have. I think if we had won the game, we probably would have stayed at the bar longer and had some celebratory drinks, but that comeback fell short.
Yeah, we need to apologize to Will right now because he's not here to defend himself. We're talking about drunk Will.
He would agree with all this.
Yeah. So let's get into the game. So I've got my good, my bad, my ugly. Now, we did this format the other day when they were after game one, when there was a loss. I think that it's very easy to get the bad and the ugly kind of bled in together. So we'll just stick to good and bad. I want to start with the bad because I like to end with the good. I want everybody to come away feeling happy from the show rather than starting with the good. And by the time they come away, they're like, oh man, I've got to start work now after y'all just brought me down. It's Monday morning.
Yeah.
So let's start with the bad. I mean, I think the obvious points that we need to touch on are the turnovers, the easy run out back buckets. And then for me, it was the over aggressiveness on pick and rolls. So they were over switching, soft switching. They were getting killed by slips, killed by go screens. And then rewatching the game, the one thing I noticed heavily in the first half of the game, and I'm writing about this at the moment, is Miami really focused on corner actions. They were getting pin downs, DHOs at the corner, and instead of guys coming across the perimeter, they were just curling off those corner DHOs, those corner screens, and just going straight at whoever was in front of them, knowing that help defense was going to come and they could kick out. And it just felt like they had Boston's number because the intensity wasn't there. The guys weren't closing out as quickly. They weren't calling out their assignments. You know, and it just, honestly, it felt like what we saw at the start of the year where that switch everything system had been put into place, but it hadn't quite clicked yet. Miami really made Boston look bad in that first half of basketball.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was Bam, right? Bam, he is the hub for that offense. And when you think back to why they were so successful in the bubble against the Celtics, you know, obviously we've already talked about how the roster was very different for the Celtics, but the strategy for the Heat was also a little bit different with that team and their roster construction because they had Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero being so integral to everything that they were doing, just flying off those zoom actions and flying off dribble handoffs and relocations, all that stuff that they do and they did to kind of mimic what the Golden State Warriors did, you know, do for out west. And with this game, Bam obviously came out a lot more aggressive, showed way more of a bag than I think anybody thought he had. Point Bam was back. He really pushed the ball in transition. Kyle Lowry made a big difference with his impact and just the pace of the game. But I think just to your point that you're just making, when Bam is aggressive on the offensive end, he's playing with a lot more force and a lot more pace. And I think that starts with Lowry, but it's also a mentality shift for Bam. And when he had such a horrible first two games where he was surprisingly invisible, seemingly he made a couple defensive plays, but for the most part, he didn't make an impact. I think, you know, when he has that gravity and then people can kind of go off him and drive off him and, you know, go DHO with him, he makes such a big difference for that team when he's aggressive. And he's one of those guys that for whatever reason, kind of like KG used to be, a little bit like Al Horford is, some games they just don't look for their shot. And, you know, he can still be effective when he's not looking for a shot, but they needed him to be the hub of their offense tonight. And he was able to score the ball as well.
I think a part of it for me as well was when you had Rob Williams healthy, and then, you know, you're either pairing Grant Williams with Rob or you're pairing Rob with Al, depending on, you know, Al wasn't around in game one. One of the biggest things about Bam is he likes to play and initiate either in the corners or on the high elbow. Sorry, the high post on the elbow. And what that does is it forces your big man up towards the elbow, towards that free throw line extended region. And that just gives guys plenty of room to come off flex screens or face cut, like 45-degree cuts, get in behind the defense, and then for Bam to initiate something from there or to attack the gaps that are left when somebody cuts and drags a defender with them. You can't really do that when you have Rob Williams in that free safety role, because even if Bam decides to attack some space or somebody cuts, you still have one of the league's best rim protectors just waiting. He's just roaming around, just like, you know, it's kind of, I like to think about it like, how can I put, kind of like an English soccer, like you've got that goalkeeper just waiting there to jump and protect the rim, protect the net, and you might blow past Horford, but you're going to meet Rob somewhere close to that rim, and your shot isn't going to be there. Then you're going to have guys start to surround you, kill passing lanes, and I feel like, to me, I felt like Bam's like anonymity in game 1 and 2 was in large part because he couldn't play the type of offense that makes him such a viable weapon for Miami because of the way Boston's defense is designed. I genuinely felt like it wasn't that Boston were honing in on Bam. It was just by design, Bam's type of style was very limited. Now, once you remove Rob Williams from that equation, and there's no rim deterrent behind Al Horford, behind Grant Williams, it just becomes a lot easier for guys like Bam to really go to work. And to me, it spoke volumes of Rob's kind of deterrency that Bam goes off in the game where Rob isn't available.
Yeah, Rob's absence was huge. And I think the biggest thing with those absences of guys like Rob Williams and elite rim protectors is just the mental shifts that everybody on the Heat can make, right? When they drive to the rim, there is no threat of the rim protection. So they're just going up there and they're not even worried about, the weak side rotation of Tice or Grant Williams or somebody like that. Even though they're capable rim protectors, they're not elite rim protectors, and they don't strike fear in your heart when you're driving to the rim. They don't make you hesitate at all when you're driving to the rim. And that's what Rob brings. He's one of those guys that think back to the Ben Wallaces of the world, the Dwight Howards of the world, Anthony Davis, when he's absolutely locked in on defense, everyone is constantly looking around, observing when is that help defense coming, and they might slow up for just a second. They don't drive with quite as much force, and Bam was just attacking relentlessly in the game last night. He looked at Al Horford and he was like, all right, man, like, let's go. Let's dance one-on-one, me and you. And he went by him multiple times, which was really surprising. But Bam has a sneaky good handle, man. He has a really good in and out dribble. He's a 2 dribble move guy, right? If you can make him go the 3rd dribble, that's when Bam starts to struggle a little bit. But he can hit you with that quick in and out crossover or like hezzy in and out. And he's super capable of doing that. And we saw that in the game last night. He came out, definitely heard all the noise. That he was challenged by the Haslams and the Rileys and the Spoelstras and the Jimmy Butlers, letting him know that they needed him to step up in the game. And I think that energy boost that the Celtics got in game 2 with Horford and Smart coming back, the Heat got that with Lowry coming back. And I think Lowry's another guy that was a real thorn in the side for the Celtics last night.
During the Heat post games, excuse me, Bam said that coming into game 3, they were kind of like, game 2, Boston beat us like we stole something. And that was the mentality they were coming into game 3 with. They beat us like we stole something. That's what he repeated it a few times. And you don't really need him to explain any more than that what sort of motivation they had coming in. Like, their pride was hurt, their ego was hurt. Now, from my standpoint, I was expecting Boston to handle their business. You drop a couple of games at home against Milwaukee, it kind of puts you in a position where you have to win a game 7. The Celtics can't afford to drop another game at home for the rest of this series, because I'm sorry, I still think Boston are the team to win the series. But if this goes to a game 7 in Miami, my opinion is going to drastically change very quickly too. So for me, you've got to protect home court. Now, Rob not being there hurts. Bam going off hurts. But at the same time, you still got ways where you could have won this game, the turnovers. But even in the half court offense, the switching just wasn't there. Bam was getting whatever he wanted because the defense wasn't executing the way they should be. It was like they didn't know how to handle pick and rolls happening in the corner rather than on the wing, in the slot, or at the top of the perimeter. Everything Miami did was corner action after corner action, especially in that first half of the game. And PJ Tucker was instrumental. He was setting screens, slipping. Then he was picking and popping down to the corner 3. He was bodying guys up on the post and then kicking it back out to Bam for some secondary creation. And the Celtics just looked like they were pretty much like they were spectators at times defensively. Obviously, they haven't been one of the better transition defensive teams all season. So when they turn the ball over and get scored on, you're kind of like, well, that is what it is. The bread and butter is to slow this game down, make these guys work for it in the half court, get some stops. And that just didn't happen until the 3rd, probably even the 4th, really. And by that point, it's just too late.
Yeah, and with those turnovers and the lack of getting back on defense, I do feel like we need to touch on Jason Tatum just for a minute. I don't want to harp on Tatum because Tatum has been so important to this team and he's been the best player for the entire season, but he had a horrible game. And the gap between Tatum's ceiling and his floor right now is just not okay. His ceiling is on par with the best players in the world. And then his floor, I do not mean to be hot takey here. I do not mean to be hyperbolic here. His floor is like an Andrew Wiggins floor. You know what I mean? I'm not saying like Andrew Wiggins playing an average Andrew Wiggins game. I'm saying when Andrew Wiggins has a horrible game, that's where Tatum's floor is right now. And it can't be that. you know, and if we look at his floor for the Brooklyn series, it was game 2, right? This is a floor that I think we're all okay with. 19 points, 5 for 16, 2 for 5 from 3, 7 or 8 from the line, 6 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 turnovers. That was his worst game in the Brooklyn series, which we won. And I think we can all agree that that's a pretty good stat line, and he still made an impact in that game. The Bucks game 3 was his floor in that series, 10 points, 4 and 19 from the field, 0 for 6 from 3, 2 for 3 from the line, 1 rebound, 3 assists. He did have 4 blocks and 1 steal, but he also had 4 turnovers in that game. And then last night, hopefully we can say that this is his floor game for this series. 10 points, 3 for 14 from the field, 1 for 7 from 3, 3 or 4 from the line, 6 rebounds, 4 or 6, 6 turnovers. And he also had a floor quarter in game 1, right? That third quarter in game 1 was about as bad as he could play. Now, you know that Jason Tatum is going to bounce back. Every time he has a bad game, he bounces back, even back to last season against the Nets. He had 9 points in game 2, and then he had that 50 spot in game 3. Like, we know Jason Tatum is going to show up in game 4. But the one thing I do want to talk about, because you talked about his the transition defense of the team, in that first quarter, he set the tone for his mentality. He had those 2 floaters. They weren't turnovers, technically, but they were bad shots. Those floaters that he took where he ended up, 3 feet under the hoop, where the team's going back down the other way, and he's the last guy getting back into the play, which led to 6 points for them, led to 2 3-point shots for them. And that's just not okay. Those shots that he takes, if he's going to take an off-balance shot, he also has to recognize that that's a low percentage shot, but he's also going to be out of position to get back on defense. And he's a guy that already doesn't get back on defense, even if, he's not taking a bad shot. So I think for Tatum in game 4, hopefully he comes in locked in on both ends of the court, and hopefully him getting back on defense and not complaining to the refs, and just knowing that if he makes a mistake on offense, he can make it back on the defensive end. That's the mentality shift that I think needs to happen with him, because as much as we have guys that are going to lead by example and, aren't going to follow Tatum's lead in terms of their lethargic pace getting back on defense, he needs to be able to set a tone as well.
And I think that the most important thing is finding a way to limit these floor games. Like, at the end of the day, we're not asking him to be at his superstar best every game, because we know that that's very difficult to do. Very few players can be 100% all of the time. But these floor games, which is probably the best way I've heard them put. So, we're definitely going to use that moving forwards. They're too frequent at the moment in big spots. This is Miami have got home court advantage back now going into game 5. There's going to be no pressure on them. And Tatum is expected to be that guy. Now credit Jaylen Brown, dropped 40, but 7 turnovers. Defense wasn't always fantastic, but we're still yet to see these 2 click at the same time and dominate an entire series. We see it from time to time, quarter to quarter, game to game. But if Jaylen and Jason both click at the same time through game 4, 5, and 6, the series is done. Miami can't contain the 2 of them playing at that level, and we're just not getting there because Tatum's arguing with the refs too much. I feel like that's been a big issue over the last probably month, more than the rest of the season. Jaylen Brown, just you make him dribble into traffic and it all just falls apart for him. He can score with the best of them, and I've always said that, but he has a tendency to be like, yo, who have you ever seen Blue Streak with Martin Lawrence?
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Where you've got where he's he's got Dave Chappelle in the alley and he's and he's like, I got this. And he looks like something like that. That reminds me of Jaylen Brown when he's taking over, just like, I got this, man. And then all of a sudden you're just turning the rock over 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So when you look at the 2 of them, I think that both of them need to find a happy medium where maybe they're not getting electric every night, but they're not crashing, because at the moment it does feels like a coffee spike. You get the jitters because you drank too much coffee. Boom, we're right out of there with it. We need a nap. We shouldn't really be here right now, and that's how it feels at the minute. 3 for 14 in an instant Eastern Conference Finals game, one that could put your team up and kind of put you closer to going back to Miami, looking to round out the series. 3 or 14 shooting is just not good enough. 14.3% from 3 is not good. 6 turnovers. The assists to me don't even need to get discussed, because if you've got less assists and you've got turnovers, you're a net negative. So I don't know. I was very disappointed. I don't agree with anyone calling it, saying he's not a superstar or saying that he shouldn't be a team's number one option. I don't agree with that. The dude's still 24 years old and he's playing on a big stage. The last time he was on a stage like this, he wasn't the number one option, or he shouldn't have been. You know what I mean? So there's definitely a learning curve, but I feel like those excuses are slowly starting to expire.
Yeah. Yeah. And there, when he goes back and watches the tape, I think what he'll see in that game is that the Heat on defense, they were leaving guys in the paint. You know, they were playing some zone, but oftentimes they had whichever the guy was, oftentimes it was Strus, whoever was guarding the worst shooter on the team was just standing right in the paint. You know, and anytime Tatum would drive to the rim, that he would just see someone standing, waiting there for him, and he would try and Euro step through them. He would try and do the extended pickup move that he likes to do in traffic. And when they know it's coming, and when they can see it from 2 steps away versus like off of a spin move or something like that, it's a little bit easier to have your hands ready or to get your hands out of there so that you don't pick up that foul. And he hasn't quite figured out the distance of the defenders in this series so far. And I think he will. You know, he struggled with Wes Matthews in the last series. He struggled to figure out all of his angles. I think he's going to get there with this Heat game. I think this is the floor, hopefully, of the series for him. And when you look at what he did after that 10-point game in the Bucks, right? So game 3 was his worst game in the Bucks. He went 30 points, 34 points, 46 points, and then 23 points in game 7. But he really came out in those next 3 games. The game 4, he was 30, 13, and 5 in game 4. And that's what I'm expecting out of him, because he's shown us that when he has a bad game, he owns up to it. He takes accountability for it, and he's going to come back and play better in game 4. But one more thing I want to touch on in terms of the bad, man, I'm starting to get concerned with the injuries mounting up for this team. We don't have a lot of depth. Yeah. And the fact that Smart came back and played, I thought he was done for the series. He was full jump, full vertical, came down all of his weight on that ankle, and then got rolled up on by Lowry. I thought he was done, man. I would be shocked if he's anywhere near 100% tomorrow night.
Marcus Smart is a Spartan, dude. Like, it's that simple, you know. There was Leonidas, then there was Marcus Smart. That's how it went. Seriously though, yeah, I completely agree. I think that losing like we saw how much Boston struggled to initiate offense without Marcus in game 1. We saw that Smart being on the floor just helps things tick over, especially in that half court when the game slows down. I mean, all credit to him, man. He came back out and put it all on the line for his team. They were down. They needed it. I think him coming back was a turning point in the way the Celtics kind of executed on both sides of the floor. He really, kind of like, I wouldn't know if it's emotionally inspired, but he definitely inspired some form of response from his teammates. So, like, you have to credit that. And it's like an all-time Marcus Smart moment, in my opinion. One of the better moments, when he's walking back through the crowd and you hear the cheers, everybody's loving it. But like you say, there's a good chance, a high chance that he's not 100%. There's even a chance that he doesn't play or he goes minutes restriction. Tatum hurts his shoulder or is like, has to come off the court, then comes back. You've got Rob that's essentially day-to-day for the rest of the playoffs at this point.
Mm-hmm. Grant grabbed at his shoulder in the first half too. He got fouled reaching up, and it looks like his shoulder kind of buckled on him a little bit. And that man, the physicality of this series and the last series, obviously we had a break in the first round. The Nets weren't very physical with us at all, but the Bucks are about as physical as it gets. And then I thought that this series, it was going to be less physical. And there, especially against guys like Tatum, like PJ Tucker is probably the most physical defender in the entire league. And he's just arm fighting with Tatum throughout the whole game. And it's no wonder that Tatum ended up hurting his shoulder at some point, just because the amount of times his arms are extended as PJ Tucker is moving into him. That's just like putting your shoulder in a compromising position. And it looked like it buckled him. I don't know if he got a stinger or if he had like a subluxation, which is like a quick dislocation, not a full dislocation. It looked like that's maybe what happened to him. Oftentimes with that, I know this from personal experience, but oftentimes what happens is you'll have like a slight labrum tear, which you can play through. But anytime your shoulder pops in and out, the reason it does that is because the labrum tears just a little bit. So I would not be surprised if at the end of the season we got word that either Grant or Tatum had like a slight labral tear in their shoulders. Because it to me, as someone that's happened to me hundreds of times, dude. I had shoulder surgery back in the day, and it happens anytime your shoulder is extended. And I think with PJ Tucker being as physical as he is, That's something to keep an eye on for Tatum. So now we have Rob with the knee, we got Smart with the ankle, we've got Tatum with the shoulder, we've got Grant with the shoulder, and then still lingering is the concern of JB's hamstring, which at any point could get hurt. It's just tough, man. There's not a lot there for the Celtics to play with. And, you know, we can't rely on Aaron Nesmith. We definitely can't rely on Tice because Tice has just been god awful. So I don't know what the Celtics are going to be able to do if Smart is not able to play in game 4, because we need that man on the court. Thankfully, on the other side, Jimmy Butler, you know, didn't come back, and it looked like Tyler Hero also had some sort of issue with his quad. But they have the depth to overcome it, and we don't.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, one of the biggest issues is, even if you get through this series, how banged up are you? How much is left in the tank to face what looks like it'll be the Warriors? Do you know what I mean? Are you at enough? Are you at 50, 60%? Is there enough in the tank to do another big series? Now, thankfully, the Warriors don't project to be nowhere near as physical. It's going to be a game more of finesse. It's going to be more of a skill-based kind of series. Whereas Milwaukee was complete brute force. And I think that, you know, I don't think Miami have been that physical games 1 and 2. I think they've been aggressive. Will said that the other day, and I've really agreed with it. They've been aggressive more than they have been physical. Game 3, Kyle Lowry back at a higher, playing at a higher speed, a higher pace. That's the word I was looking for. Running a lot more screening actions because they've got a guard that can start initiating more. The physicality ratcheted up 2 or 3 notches. You know, Bam was playing physical. As you said, PJ Tucker got physical. Lowry's he's a big guy. He's broad. He can play physical. You start to see the injuries. Now, is Jason Tatum going to recover? Is that shoulder going to recover in time for game 5? Is it game 4? Game 5? Game 4?
Game 4.
Yeah.
I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be okay. Yeah.
And then you got Smart, you got JB, as you said, you got Rob. There's just so many, and like the Celtics can deal with one injury. You know, one guy goes down, they've got enough depth to be able to stay afloat and be a very competitive team. 2 guys go down, as we saw in game 1. There's just not enough depth there. All of a sudden, you get Aaron Nesmith being thrust into the lineup for the first time in the postseason, playing like proper minutes instead of garbage time minutes, and that's a huge concern, man. But that's going to be a concern for pretty much every team in the playoffs. You build a team with a top 8 or 9 guy rotation, and then if somebody gets hurt, you have to lean on somebody that usually wouldn't get minutes. So but the problem is there's 4 or 5 guys for Boston right now that could potentially have to miss time in the next few games.
For sure. And we can talk, as we want to transition into the good, and we can talk about X's and O's and like what we saw in the last game, what to look forward in game 4. But to me, man, the bigger thing that I kind of am feeling about this right now is the amount of adversity the Celtics have faced in these playoffs, and they've always bounced back from it. And I'm still looking at that end of the season, Celtics holding up the championship trophy. I still see that happening. And to think like how much adversity they're facing in these playoffs, if they are to win the championship, this is going to go down as like one of the all-time championships. Going through the Nets in the first round, going through Giannis in the second round, this Miami team that's super, super, you know, they're just a great team, dude. And then you're going to have to potentially face either Luka, which it doesn't look like right now, or the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry. Like if they go through that gauntlet and end up hoisting the championship, where, you know, the Celtics social media posts Jaylen Brown holding the trophy, just hashtag shifted. Like I see all that stuff happening. I still think that if we get through this series, we will have enough in the tank to win the finals. To me, whoever wins this series is more likely to win the finals than whoever comes out of the West, because I think we're more prepared for like the physicality of what the finals is going to look like versus what the Warriors are going to be ready for. Because you saw how the Warriors struggle with the Grizzlies in the last round, and if they go up against either of these teams, I think they're going to face very similar problems.
I think my biggest concern is right now, Boston needs to start stringing wins together. It's what like, you know, it's what carried that Bucks series to a 7-game series. It's what's hurting them right now. It's win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. And then all of a sudden your back's against the wall, win, win. Whereas if you can string a couple of wins together, you get more rest time. You get time to get your body right. Now I saw a tweet from, I think it was, is it McMahon, from Tim McMahon from ESPN, saying, you know, this isn't indicative of the way the series is going, but Miami have won 2 quarters of basketball in 3 games, and they've got 2 wins. both of Boston's losses have came off like real big quarters early in games, and then Boston have been in a hole. They've had to dig themselves out. You look at the points off turnovers. I think it was like 28 points off turnovers in this game. You lose by barely anything. You know, what was the loss? I've got the score in front of me. You lose by, what's that, 6? You lose by 6, but you give up 28 in turnover points. Every loss in this series especially has been self-inflicted. Now, if you can start tidying up that passing, and obviously Miami are really good at speeding you up. They're really good at forcing you to make passes, and then they jump in the passing lane. But you need to be able to string a couple of wins together, because in my opinion, if you can win this game in 6, you get a bit of rest time before you go and face Golden State. And I agree with you. I don't think Golden State are prepared for the level of physicality either Miami or Boston will be bringing to the floor. But we're talking about a team with pure championship pedigree. They've been there. They've been against physical teams. You know, they've defeated teams that play a robust bully ball type of basketball. They've defeated LeBron. So I think they are kind of ready for it. I just don't know whether at their age now, you know, Steph's getting older, Dre's getting older, Clay's getting older than the injuries. Are they capable of overcoming it? That's the bigger question for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I think thinking about the Warriors, that pool party lineup, I heard this, I think it was on the Low Post, that it only played 1 minute in the last game, or maybe in the series. I forget what the actual stat was, but you know, having Clay, Steph, and Jordan Poole on the floor at the same time, whichever team makes it into the next round, if the Warriors go with that lineup, that's a very exploitable lineup, you know, and someone like Jimmy Butler can go hunting for Jordan Poole. Somebody like Jason Tatum can go hunting for Jordan Poole. So they're not really going to be able to like play their best offensive lineups without sacrificing a lot on the defensive end. So they have their own challenges, as much as people, you know, they look at the championship pedigree, and maybe right now some people have them as the favorites to win the title. I think with whoever wins this series in the East, in my opinion, is more likely to win the finals. But just getting back to my original point, like what would be your take on the Celtics winning banner 18 in this year, man? Like, this has been a really tough schedule for them.
Yeah, it's an all-time championship run. Do you know what I mean? You're going against Kevin Durant, arguably the best player in the world. You beat him, then you go up against Giannis, rightfully the best player in the world at the moment. Then you come through that, you're going up against Jimmy Butler, the most in form player in the world at the moment, you know, just a complete wing, playing the best basketball of his life, arguably playing the best basketball of the postseason, period. Then you surpass that. Then you go up against Stephen Curry, the best shooter in the history of the world, in the history of the game, in the world, everything. Then you go up against Draymond Green, one of the most cerebral defenders that the game's seen in a long time. Klay Thompson, one of the best supplementary scorers that we've ever seen, and you defeat them. Well, that's an all-time run to me, because how much more difficult could it have possibly been? You know what I'm saying? So my take on it would be like, yo, you got to lift that banner to the rafters. Then you need to give Ime Udoka a lifetime deal. You need to, you know, I'd start overreacting. Obviously, I don't wish anyone to get a lifetime deal, because you start resting on your laurels. And that's bringing me onto the good, you know, because I do think that this Celtics team is still the better team in this series. As I said a moment ago, their losses are self-inflicted. What I liked from Udoka was he started to counter with his lineups and his rotations. You know, we saw that one rotation where it was Marcus Smart, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and then I think it was Al Horford and Jason Tatum. And he just literally surrounded Tatum with floor spacers and guys that could put the ball on the floor, could penetrate, could score off a catch and shoot. And everyone apart from Pritchard is a high-level defender. So, and he did that to counter. I can't remember what Miami did, but he did it to counter what Miami had put on the floor. And all of a sudden, the Celtics make a run. And we haven't really seen Udoka counter rotations like that so far in his early career in Boston. We've seen him make tweaks, but to do something as bold as put out three guards along with a big and Tatum, I don't recall seeing him do that through the postseason or the regular season. So I was impressed by that, because that took guts.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what allowed him to do that, because I think that was in the second half that lineup was out there, you know, no Jimmy Butler, you know, so Jimmy Butler's out in the second half. So you don't have to worry about someone like Peyton Pritchard getting exposed on the defensive end. And you really just like, all right, we're down 20. We need our best offensive lineups on the court. We obviously need to take care of the ball, but what what are the chinks in the armor that we can expose right now without Jimmy Butler being out there. And Vic Oladipo had a heck of a game, man, in the second half. He was so good on the defensive end. I think he forced like 5 or 6 turnovers by himself in that second half after not really playing in the first half. I don't think he played in the first half, but I agree, man. I think Udoka like seizing that opportunity to be like, oh, let's try something different, because they don't have their ace in the hole of Jimmy Butler, apex predator Jimmy Butler going hunting for little P Rabbit. He wasn't there on the court to go hunting for him. So I really like that adjustment as well. And then JB, man, as I know he struggled taking care of the ball in the second half, but I'm not going to knock the guy, man. Like Oladipo is one of the, in his prime, was one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. And I think JB quickly realized that. Like, he went at him 3 or 4 times in a row, and Oladipo's like stonewalled him 3 or 4 times in a row, stole the ball from him twice, 2 times in a row. And I think JB eventually was like, okay, this is not the guy for me to go ISO on. He started to get off the ball a little bit and, shoot threes a little bit more. He was on fire from 3 in the second half after missing some easy ones in the first half. But I think seeing Jaylen Brown play with the level of force and looking healthy and, playing explosively, I think it bodes well for game 4, because Tatum's going to show up. And if JB is just playing explosively and playing with confidence, he's got that 3-point shot going, that really does bode well for this team. And then Peyton Pritchard, I also think deserves a little shout. I just think he's playing good basketball right now, dude. Like, his shot looks good. He's confident with that handle. I wouldn't mind seeing him bring the ball up a little bit more against pressure, to kind of be an escape valve for everyone else who has to deal with, 94 feet of pressure. I think he's a guy that Ime is going to give a lot more minutes to, potentially in game 4.
I think the other good thing about Brown as well is we found a target that he can attack consistently with great success. Tyler Hero I always say Hero, had no answer for Jaylen Brown on the rip through. None at all. Jaylen could just drive at him and drive at him and drive at him, and Hero's just like, yo, just take my cookies, dude. Have all the cookies. I don't want no piece of it. So just like we know that Miami are going to target Peyton Pritchard when he's on the floor, and they're going to run actions to get Pritchard switched on to Jimmy or to Kyle Lowry. Well, now Boston have their answer to that. We're going to run actions to put Jaylen Brown on Tyler Hero, because we know that if you want to target one guy and keep spamming that action, we can do the same on the other end. And sometimes just having that becomes like a deterrent. Like, oh, okay, so are we really going to watch like 4 quarters of Brown cooking Hero and Butler cooking Pritchard? No, both teams are going to start making adjustments after a while. So to me, that's a good way of being like, all right, then you can't hunt us because we can hunt you too. And it starts to open things up a little bit more. I do think that Pritchard played some good D on Jimmy at times. There's that one possession where I think it was late in the first or early in the second where Pritchard switched on to Jimmy. Jimmy's trying to body him down. Mm-hmm. Pritchard stands strong. Jimmy faces up, doesn't get the shot off, then ends up. And it was just a really solid possession from Pritchard, as if to say, like, yo, you can't bully me, dude. I'm going to stand my ground. And I think that Pritchard's been one of the most underrated members of the rotation through the postseason, because he's come up clutch in a few different games at this point.
Yeah, he's been great, man. I can't say enough about Peyton Pritchard, but I loved that moment because the crowd knew what was happening, right? The crowd knew that Jimmy Butler was going hunting for Pritchard. And the moment they got in the ISO, they pretty much everyone started like standing up and cheering for Pritchard. It was great. And then, when he initially stopped him, he forced him to pick up his dribble and he didn't have the initial shot. People went wild. The crowd started reaching that all-time like Garden fever that only the Garden can hit. And then Pritchard forced the shot because we denied that first pass, and Jimmy took the fadeaway jumper and he came up super short and the crowd just went bananas. And that was like one of those moments that I think started to shift, the momentum in that game just a little bit. And I think watching back that game last night, I do want to, can I talk about the refs for a second? Just real quick.
Yeah.
I know we don't like complaining about the refs, but man, there were so many moments in that game that the Celtics killed their own momentum, but also the refs, man. Like the amount of illegal screens they're allowing the Miami Heat to do, especially Bam Adebayo and PJ Tucker, it's getting ridiculous, man. There was one play I think it was late in the first half, maybe early in the second, where they called Horford for a moving screen, right? And it probably was a moving screen. And then the very next possession, PJ Tucker came up on Jaylen Brown and like hip checked him. And the only difference between those two, and they didn't call it, the only difference between those two is that Kyle Lowry exaggerated the contact and flailed, and Jalen tried to fight through the contact and he didn't get the call. So like, if the refs are going to reward the Heat for flailing, if Horford kind of leans into a screen, the Celtics are going to have to do the same, because the Heat set illegal screens all game. Bam Adebayo sets illegal screens almost every single time, and so does PJ Tucker. So I would like for the Celtics to exaggerate that contact a little bit, because I think that I counted at least 6 illegal screens where refs were literally staring at the play happening. And then Max Strus, bro, that guy plays like physical on the defensive end. You can get by him, but he shoves. He'll hip check you as you go by him. He'll put his forearm into your core to get you off balance in the air, like kind of dangerous plays, people driving to the basket. I think the refs just need to get a handle on the games early in game 4, because the physicality of game 3, to me, I thought the refs completely lost control of that game, and that didn't do the Celtics any favors.
Yeah, and there's a fine line, right? Because sometimes against Milwaukee, I felt like the refs were too in control.
Mm-hmm,
you know what I mean?
sure.
There was no rhythm whatsoever. This version, we're like, oh, well, you do need to have some form of protection for these guys. And I think that's what led to Grant Williams getting in PJ Tucker's face at one point, because it was like, yo, you've been hip checking dudes, you've been shoving guys all game, you've had your elbows and forearms in people's backs. Now you go and do it to Tatum, the star. Now we need to kind of come and step into your face a little bit and just let you know, like, yo, we know what you're doing. We're not having none of that. But as you said, it shouldn't get to that point. And when you face a team like Milwaukee that was super physical, we never really saw any two guys really going at each other, because the refs were stumping it out early and often. They were like, no, we're not going to allow this, and we're going to draw a line here. And all I ask is for consistency. If you're going to call it on one end, call it on the other. If it's going to be very similar with a slight difference, make sure you call it, and keep guys from getting frustrated from where they feel the need to get in each other's faces, because you don't want guys to get into an altercation, to get suspended, to kind of, dampen the next game and remove some talent from that rotation, because then you put an asterisk on the series. You give one fan base, or you give both fan bases an opportunity to be like, oh, well, this didn't happen and we had so-and-so, then we would have won. Like, so just control the game, man. So I do agree. I think the refs were a bit lackluster in this game.
Yeah, and the consistency I totally agree with, but they got to call the action and not the result of the action. If you think that leaning into somebody on a screen is an offensive foul, then call the lean in. Don't call the person who just like falls to the ground and flails. Don't call that reaction the foul. Call what the guy actually does to create that contact. And that's the only thing. I watched it back this morning, man, and I was just super frustrated. I kept slowing down in real time. I was like, that was an illegal screen. And then I would slow it down and watch it in half speed, not 0.5 speed. And and every time I saw that, I was like, no, they're leaning in real time. It's a lean in. And then also when you slow it down, you can see they're very clearly committing illegal screens. So hopefully the Celtics send that tape to the league and they get a handle on that.
0.5 speed.
Not 0.5.
Not 0.5. No, I agree. And I feel like, at the end of the day, until the refs get a handle on it, when we were talking about injuries and susceptibility and guys that are susceptible to injuries, we're going to see someone get hurt. And all that's going to do again is put an asterisk on there. Both teams have fought hard to get into the conference finals as it is. I just want to see it played physically but clean and fair. And there's a world where that can happen. We just didn't see in this game. But at the same time, when you are getting punched in the mouth and guys are being physical with you, you can't allow them to do that without fighting back. And I think that's where Boston went wrong in the first half of this game, was they were getting out muscled. This team came out and was like, right, then we're going to be Severus Snape and we're going to master you with the dark arts. And Boston were like, nah, dude, we're Gryffindor. We're going to rise above that. And it just, sometimes it takes a while for that to happen. Whereas I would have preferred them to have taken that potion that Harry and Ron did, where they looked like the Slytherin dudes. Do you remember the one?
Yeah, Polyjuice potion. Yeah, the Polyjuice potion. Yeah, exactly.
So you get the idea behind what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I got you. But to one last point though, like we started Tice in the game, and I think Tice is the wrong guy to start if you want to punch back. Tice is just a punching bag for physical teams, man. And he just doesn't have the ability to stand up to a bully. He he just kind of gets pushed around on the court and then doesn't really do anything about it. I think he had a couple nice defensive possessions, guarding Bam in isolation, but in general, he doesn't set a good tone. And hopefully we have Rob back for game 4 and Tice doesn't have to see the floor. But Ime, I understand why he decided to go with Tice in the starting lineup to keep Grant coming off the bench and keep guys in certain roles. But to me, Daniel Tice does not deserve minutes against the Miami Heat. They look at him as a target and they take advantage of that target.
He's food. Right, I'm going to end with this because Keith Smith tweeted this out while we were recording. Little injury update heading into game 4. Jason Tatum is fine. Marcus Smart has a bad ankle sprain, getting treated today, which is Sunday, and Celtics will see for Monday's game. So, we're going to put that marking down as questionable. Robert Williams is feeling better, but still day-to-day and questionable for game 4. So really, grand scheme of things, you're listening to this podcast on Monday morning, Marcus Smart and Robert Williams are questionable to start the day. Not the best place to be after we both have said earlier that, you can hide one injury on this team. If you've got 2, things are going to start looking quite bad quite quickly.
Yeah, and we told you that we were going to leave you feeling good at the end of this podcast.
I said maybe.
So to get you feeling good, there's no way the Celtics lose 2 in a row at home. I think they've shown that they can bounce back. Jason Tatum's going to come out. The fact that Tatum's okay, I think that's the biggest news to take away from the injury report. Tatum's going to go off in game 4, and I think the Celtics tie this up.
And Celtics, anyone from the teams listening right now, I played basketball today for the first time in 2 years. I'm capable of coming off the bench for you and giving you a solid 2.5 minutes of basketball.
I could at least run full speed into Tyler Hero and take him out. Not PJ Tucker. Don't ask me to do that because that dude will knock me out.
I don't know. I've got NBA size. I just don't have NBA talent.
You're what, 6'3", 230 right now?
Yeah, so I measured myself yesterday actually because my little one wanted to see how tall she was. So I'm literally I'm right there at 6'3". So I'm not I'm at 6'3", but I'm not 6'3 1/4. So I'm pretty much bang on 6'3", around about 240, 245.
Okay. Yeah, that's some size, man. You could at least go out, set some screens, be a linebacker on the court. I'm 6 feet, 190. So, but I got glass shoulders, bro. I would definitely get hurt within the first 30 seconds of being out there. So, I think they're better off going with you, or at least, maybe going with my guy Malik. I want to see if Malik could actually get a couple minutes. If we need somebody because of depth issues, I think Malik offers enough on the defensive end with his size where I'd like to see what he could do just for one stint.
So I'm 245, by the way. I'm 6'3", 245.
Hey.
So I'm big enough to be no, Mr. Kyle Lowry, you cannot bump me today. But I am not good enough to be no, Mr. Kyle Lowry, you're not getting past me or you're not scoring on me. It'll be, yes, Mr. Kyle Lowry, you can score on me at will today. So
let's work you out for a 10-day contract next season. We'll see what's up.
Yeah, with the under 10s. Right, everybody, if you've enjoyed the show, make sure you tell all your friends, your family, share it on social media. If you've enjoyed hearing Greg's voice, well, Greg's voice is also in musical form. That's right. So make sure you go check out his band Black Sheep Optimist. Greg will tell you where you can find those.
Yeah, you could find us on all social media platforms at Black Sheep Optimists. Search us up. So it's 3 words, Black Sheep Optimists with an S at the end of that. Search us up on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your music. We actually had a show last night, which went super well. We got another show June 11th at this big hip hop festival in Texas. And then after that, taking a little break from music, hopefully for a month, where I can just kind of chill out and spend time with my family back in Boston. Going to be back in Boston for the summertime. But check out Black Sheep Optimist. We're going to be releasing some new tracks within the next few months, and appreciate you listening. You'll hear my voice at the end of this pod. That's a song from our first EP that's called D-Lo. Thanks, everybody.
Just to wrap it up, I know you kind of led into to the outro now, but I hear you're opening for Jay-Z.
Yeah, that's actually true. That is not a false statement. I'm opening for Jay-Z. It's not the Jay-Z you know, but it is.
It's a different Jay-Z, but this one's Jayeezeeey, Jay-Z. But there we go, everybody. We'll catch you again on Wednesday. Peace out.
Peace.